Hello everyone again, and welcome to today's webinar, Giving Voice to Primary Pupils' Plurilingual Repertoire. We will be joined today by two guest speakers, and we will showcase both what Erasmus Plus can do for enhancing primary pupils' plurilingual repertoire, but also we'll hear from speakers who know all about bringing plurilingualism into their classrooms. Just a second, I'll share my screen so you can get an idea of what this hour will look like. Okay. So just the running order for today, after a brief introduction about the day and the Erasmus Plus context, we will showcase an inclusion role model video from Annie Asgard at Clada National School. Later, we will hear from our main guest speaker for the day, Dr. Déirdre Kirwan, who is one of the co-authors of the Primary Intercultural Guidelines. We will later hear from Liz Mallory from English National School, who will showcase one of her Erasmus Plus projects. And we'll have a brief few minutes at the end for questions and answers, and I hope we'll have enough time for the evaluation. Just so that we are all familiar with what Erasmus Plus is. Erasmus Plus is the EU program that supports education, training, youth, and sports in Europe. Léargas is a national agency for a number of the sectors, including adult education, school education, which is relevant to today's webinar, vocational education and training, and youth. And Erasmus Plus has a number of objectives and priorities, and inclusion is one of the program's objectives. And today's theme of including everyone's voice within the school and hearing everyone's voice within the school environment falls, broadly speaking, under the theme of inclusion. As today's webinar doesn't have to deal only with EAL learners, also known as English as an additional language, but it has to do with including every child, so making sure that no child is left behind, making sure everyone's voice is heard, but also welcoming plurilingualism and diversity into our school environment. And I will ask my colleague Alex now to share the video that we have of Annie Asgard. It's a great example of what Erasmus Plus can do for inclusion, diversity, including ELL learners and other students.
Just a second, Ellie.
No worries. This is the time where I should probably say a joke or something. I didn't.
No, it's okay.
My name is Annie Asgard, and I teach English language support in a disadvantaged school in Galway City. And at the moment, we have children who come from about 35 different linguistically diverse backgrounds. And so it's a really culturally and linguistically diverse school. And so we really celebrate the plurilingual kind of environment. I had the opportunity to work with staff from other countries, and I saw how migrant education works. And it taught me a lot about how Ireland is doing with regards to welcoming students from migrant backgrounds. I did a course in Slovenia on multicultural schools, and when I attended that course, there were teachers there who were working in schools like Spain and Italy and Greece, where they were working at schools directly adjacent to or on refugee hotspots, they called them. And it was very interesting to hear their approaches in working with children who had newly arrived. The learning that I gained in that course in Slovenia, I was able to bring that back to Ireland. We now have a much broader awareness of trauma-informed approaches when working with migrant students, and the mother tongue of the children that we work with at school. Obviously, we want children to acquire English as soon as possible so that they can access the curriculum and succeed educationally and socially at school. But I think we need to be aware that they can't do that at the expense of their mother tongue, which is so much a part of their identity. I just think that being a part of European mobilities with my colleagues and as part of my school, it's let me look through the lens of being a European citizen, and that, you know, Ireland is not just a country at the edge of Europe. We're not in isolation, and that we have teaching colleagues all over Europe from whom we can learn, and people that we can share all of the innovative things that are going on here in Ireland. And I would encourage all teachers to take part. My name.
I hope this gave you a taste of European mobilities and what it can do for your school, for your students, for yourself as an educator. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, Dr. Déirdre Kirwan, one of the co-authors of the Intercultural Primary Guidelines, Primary Intercultural Guidelines. And Déirdre is best known for her approach that she took with the colleagues in conjunction at Scoil Brigde Calini in Blanchardstown. Déirdre, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to speak at today's webinar and share with us the wealth of resources and condense the guidelines as much as one can, and give us a taster of how to bring plurilingualism into our schools and how to celebrate it.
Thank you very, I have unmuted. Thank you very much, Ellie. I'm delighted to be here today. And that was a very interesting little video at the beginning. And certainly Erasmus Plus has so much to offer in terms of learning for all of us. But if you will bear with me now while I pull up my screen. There we are, and I shall I turned off the audio as well, so you can hear me now, can you? That's great. Okay, so today what I want to do is talk about plurilingual education, because plurilingual education has benefits for all learners, and in the 21st century we can't keep going the way we have been going for the past however many years. We need to realize that you know, there are more than 200 languages in Ireland at the moment, and so we'll have a chat just about plurilingualism in the classroom and how we can facilitate that and how it benefits all the learners. So here we go. This is the outdoor classroom of the school where I was principal from 1987 until 2015. And when you think of those dates, you will realize that what happened in, you know, very early on in my career as principal, the school began to change from being the traditional school in a growing suburb of Dublin, to where the grandparents and parents had been to school, and now their children were going there. And then we began to enroll children from all over the world as Ireland opened up to a new era. Traditionally, we would be a country of emigration, but now we were welcoming people to our own country. So the school would have in or around 320 pupils. I mean, that could fluctuate 10 more or 10 less at any time, and from the age of 4 to 12 years. By 2015, 80% of the children in the school came from immigrant families, and most of them had little or no English when they started school. 51 home languages were identified, and most of those languages were unknown to the teachers. And you can see there at the bottom of the slide the 51 languages that were identified. Now, English, it was an English medium school. Irish is a curricular language, and we also introduced the teaching of French in 5th class and continued it into 6th class. So today, essentially, my presentation is based on this handbook, Language and Languages in the Primary School, Some Guidelines for Teachers, that were written based on what we as teachers learned in Scolvrige, Scolvrige Colini over those years. And we were delighted to welcome Professor David Little into the school as well. And, you know, his guidance was absolutely marvelous. And so he and I co-authored this. And 2 copies have been sent to every primary school in the country. But the very good thing is that you can also get it online, and which means it's available free to everybody to access. And these guidelines are intended for everybody because they address the plurilingual nature of language learning, and therefore they are for everybody, regardless of what a person's home language may be. So very quickly, to go through some of the underpinning principles of this approach. Now, we're very lucky in Ireland to have a primary school child-centered curriculum. And the more I have interacted with people from other countries, the more I value this curriculum and its learner-centeredness, because not every country has a learner-centered curriculum at primary level. And just to remind ourselves of the basic ethos, aims, and principles of that, we want every pupil to reach their full potential. We start from the child's existing knowledge and experience because that forms the basis for learning. Language itself helps the child to clarify and interpret experience, to acquire new concepts, and to add depth to the concepts already grasped. The child is an active agent in his or her learning. And at this point, I want to say that sometimes we think of an active agent as that the child is always doing something physically active. But an active agent also refers to cognitively active, which is very important. Collaborative learning is important. Of course, in the times we live in, further education and lifelong learning are important. And the life of the home is the most potent factor in the child's development during the primary school years. And as a school community, we worked very closely with parents. And when school and home work together, that's when we get the best results for the children concerned. How does this fit in with the Council of Europe's idea of plurilingualism? Well, it fits in very well. The two of them completely, the primary school curriculum and the Council of Europe's European Framework of Reference for Languages can coexist very, very well together. So the Council of Europe defines plurilingualism as a communicative competence to which all knowledge and experience of language contributes, and in which languages interrelate and interact. So the Council of Europe's plurilingual approach entails that all the languages in the learner's repertoire have a part to play in his or her education. And we know that every individual has his or her personal linguistic repertoire, and no two repertoires are the same, just in the same way that no two individuals are the same. A European Union language policy objective is that every European citizen should be able to use 2 other languages in addition to their mother tongue. Why would we ask somebody to leave their mother tongue outside the school gate? Scolregia encourages immigrant pupils to use their home language inside as well as outside the classroom in the interest of educational inclusion. So, towards a plurilingual education, what are the implications for inclusion of EAL pupils? Well, the primary school curriculum has told us it assumes a strong link between school and home. EAL pupils have lived their preschool years mostly in a language other than English or Irish. Their home language is central to their sense of self, their identity. It's the default medium of their discursive thinking. It's their cognitive tool for learning. And it's ever present in the unspoken stream of their consciousness. To suppress home languages, Professor Little has told us, is cruel, foolish, and doomed to failure. And if EAL pupils are to realize their full potential as unique individuals, ways must be found of including their home languages in the educational process. And at this point, I just want to say that as teachers, we don't have to know all of the languages in the classroom in order to support the pupils who do know them. What we're talking about here is more about learning than teaching. And I'm very familiar with the very understandable fears that teachers can sometimes have in relation to trying to help children whose language they themselves don't understand. You know, teachers will say, I don't know the language. I don't know what the children are saying. How can I correct their work? How can I control this situation? And I would just say, take a deep breath. You don't need to worry. You don't need to know the language. You don't need to correct it. You don't need to control it. Our job as teachers is to create an environment where pupils feel valued, welcomed, encouraged, and affirmed. By valuing their language, we value the pupils. And when that happens, we get more confident pupils who will be willing to engage. Just take a moment and think of the children in your class or the group that you deal with. And each one of those has their own personal bank of linguistic knowledge, their personal linguistic repertoire. What a resource this is for everyone in the class. Each child brings this to their own learning, and in a child-centered approach, we build on this, or rather, we help the learner to build on it. So this can require a small shift in attitude, but I can absolutely reassure you it is well worthwhile, because when children are learning something that is meaningful to them, they'll remember it. And they will feel valued and engaged more. And here I just want to move on to what one of our teachers said. When you bring in the home language, the lights come on. And another teacher said, it's not always about what I bring to this group. It's about what I can find that they have to offer to themselves and to others. This changes the way I approach teaching. I could never go back to the way I used to teach before. And what both of these teachers here are talking about is learning. It's looking to see what the learner has to offer and helping the learner to build on that. So part one of the guidelines, I'll go through this first of all. Language is the conduit for learning. There is no education without language. And good language teaching is good for everybody, whatever their home language. We hear a lot about oral language, we hear a lot about literacy, but listening, speaking, reading, and writing are language skills. They are inextricably linked together in that they support each other in terms of language learning. Oral communication is context dependent. Comprehension is supported by concrete objects, intonation, gesture, physical situations. If we're talking about transport, and a bike is one way to transport you from one place to another, we can go down to the yard, have a look at bikes, see where the pedals are, the wheels are, etc. However, academic language is context reduced. It's the kind of language that I'm using at the moment and that you are listening to. The cues to meaning are entirely spoken or written text. No child has academic language as a home language. And this is where it's very important for the school to begin to build this academic language in the children. Jim Cummins has given us a very useful image here in terms of thinking about languages and how languages support each other. If you think of the tip of the iceberg, that's the bit we can see above the water level. That's the bit, that's the language that we can see and hear that somebody is using. But underneath, just like the iceberg, there is a vast area that we don't see. And that area has been called the common underlying proficiency area. And this is devoted entirely to the development of languages, and each one helps the other. We've heard a lot since the beginning of the pandemic of the phrase sco a chéile a warren na dina. Well, equally sco a chéile a warren na teangacha. Languages help each other. So the pedagogical implications of the plurilingual approach to language teaching. We need to ground our teaching and learning in language use that is spontaneous and authentic. Spontaneous means natural language as it arises from activities in class. Authentic concerns learners in immediate context of learning and their lives generally. And a plurilingual repertoire is at the heart of an individual's identity. So teaching and learning needs to be organized in a way that engages existing identities. The second thing is that teaching and learning draws on all the linguistic resources of the learners. This includes their proficiency in other languages and their intuitive knowledge of linguistic structures and conventions of language use. Where this is opened up to everyone in the classroom, it is a massive opportunity for all learners in the classroom, including the teacher. We acknowledge that languages are discrete. The plurilingual repertoire allows for language switching. The CEFR describes proficiency in relation to particular languages. Languages are separable in the mind and in most contexts of use. And the goal of the plurilingual approach is to enable learners to achieve the highest level of literate proficiency in each language that they learn. And also to help learners to develop language learning skills. Plurilingual repertoires are provisional, in that life changes may require us to learn a new language, or may result in our using a language that we know less frequently. How happy was I when one of our 6th class Indigenous Irish children said, sometimes it's not really about which language you're learning, it's how to learn a language. And this relates straight back to the primary school curriculum and lifelong learning. So coming to part 2 of the guidelines, which is about the implementation of all of these kind of ideas. So what supports are needed? Well, first of all, a school language policy is very important because it's important for everybody in the school to know where they each stand in relation to the actual policy, how language is dealt with and all of that kind of thing. And this is a great support for teachers in that sometimes we get caught by the tyranny of the textbook and the workbook. And while textbooks and workbooks can be very supportive, they are not the school curriculum. They are supports for implementing the school curriculum. And sometimes it's important to deviate from the textbook when things arise during the course of a lesson in class, and teachers need support in the policy to enable them to do that kind of thing, because that's when the real learning occurs. That's when you have children offering their contribution to whatever is going on, and that's the bit they remember. And therefore we need to make space for that. A well-stocked library in the languages of the school, Parents can be very good at giving books that their children are finished with, and that can go into the library to allow the multilingual aspect of the library to develop. And also there are grants now from PPLI in order to buy books in different languages so that children have access to them. One thing I would say that's really important for particularly for children in 5th and 6th class is to have a dictionary available in the languages of the classroom, so that children who speak those languages have access to a dictionary in their home language, and also a thesaurus for developing English language learning, because, you know, sometimes when we're learning a language, we light upon one word that serves a lot of purposes. You know, we're happy to do this, we're happy about that, and the word happy keeps getting used all the time. Whereas as native speakers of the English language, we know there are a lot of words that can be substituted for happy. So the thesaurus is a really valuable item to have in the senior classes. It hardly needs to be said that as teachers, affirmation is the name of the game. As one of our teachers constantly reminded all of us, you know, children may not remember what you've said, but they certainly will remember how you make them feel. So encouragement and positivity is very important. Also, documentation of language learning is a very, very good way for both teacher and pupils to actually be able to measure what they're learning, particularly with language, because it is such a creative medium, because we will always meet people who have greater, more well-developed language skills, whatever the language, than we have ourselves. We can sometimes feel inadequate in terms of the time that we've spent learning. Whereas, for example, if children keep a portfolio of the work that they've done, they can look back 2 months, 5 months, and they will be able to see during that time the huge progress that they've made, which is, again, a very positive thing for them to be able to do. Language support classes are for everybody, particularly in the junior classes, junior infants and senior infants. What we always did was everybody got the opportunity to go to the language support teacher in groups of, say, 4 or 5 or 6, not more than that and not less than 4. And so we would have native English speakers within that as well. And this can be really good for the children who are learning English, because their peers are providing modeling of the English language for them. And for the English speakers to have this time that is devoted to language itself is wonderfully beneficial for them as well. Parents are very, very important. When it comes to teaching the languages, as I said, we couldn't do that, but the parents, by maintaining and developing their language, were continuing to build up their children's language skills in their home language. And this was really important when it came to literacy, because whatever was done in school, starting in the very junior classes, the children could go home and talk about that, tell their parents about that in the home language. That supports the development of the home language. It also supports really well whatever conceptual learning is going on there. And then when it came to literacy, whatever they were writing in school, they could bring home, and the parents could help them to write it in their home language. So let's look at the 3 functions of home languages in the classroom, particularly when the teacher can't speak these languages or doesn't know them, which in the case of quite a lot of the languages will be the situation. So in reciprocal communication between the children, play at the beginning of the school day and in the yard, pair and group work to work out a problem. You can use your home language with your colleagues, but the report will have to be made to the larger group in English. So you get a double innings here in terms of both language learning and concept learning. For non-reciprocal purposes, where children feel free and happy to say, well, in my language, we say this, that, or the other. And in the most junior classes, learning to count, working with shapes and colors and action games, these are all multilingual activities, and everybody benefits from that. If you can count, if you're taught to count from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 in junior infants in English, you can then be taught that in Irish, and then you can also learn it in the languages of your classmates, because those children will know how to do it in their own language. And use of the home languages scaffolds the learning of English and Irish. And it's also a source of intuitive knowledge for everyone. It enriches curriculum content and consolidates curriculum learning. One of the first results we saw coming out of this was really high levels of language awareness. A little girl who came to the school in June before junior infants, she came to Ireland, and in the June stepped off the plane, could speak Chinese, but didn't have any English. And 18 months later, she was reading from a little children's book that she had shown me. Now, there were pictures in this book. This is the only reason why I was able to ask her this question. When she was telling me what the book was about in English, she translated gate as door. And when I asked her about that, she explained in her language, door is used to describe a means of entry, both indoors and outdoors, while in English, 2 different words are needed to take account of the different locations. And this was 18 months she had been learning English for, and she was able to analyze the difference between her language, the English language, and explain it to me in English. A teacher in 3rd class was introducing fractions, so she associated the word fraction with fracture and elicited the synonyms from the class, break and split. And then she opened it to find words for break in all the other languages of the class. A Romanian pupil offered rupt, which pupils quickly linked to the eruption of a volcano, interruption, disruption. Look at all this vocabulary learning that comes from spreading it out to the plurilingual repertoires of the class. Another incident occurred when the teacher wrote the word octopus on the board and asked the children how many legs an octopus has. And after a minute or so, a little Romanian girl suggested that an octopus had 8 legs. The teacher told her she was right, and asked her how she'd figured it out. And the child said that when she looked at the word, the first part of it, oct, reminded her of ucht in Irish. And the teacher congratulated her and then asked were there any other words for 8? And I was looking at the English speakers in the class as we got wheat, ocho, oto, oshema, lots of different words for the word 8. And again, this shows the enrichment of the learning that is there for everybody. What did the parents say about this? Finding the similarities between your own home language, English, Irish, and French, it definitely speeds up the learning of English. We're happy about the school's interest in our language. Before, my daughter was ashamed to hear us speaking it. Now she wants to read and write in it. And an Irish parent said, it makes them want to speak the Irish more at home. And this was one of the big assets, that when the Irish language was there in the midst of all of these languages, it found a higher status. It began to be used more for communication purposes and in individual writing and communal writing in the school. Language awareness needs to be activated. It's a new way of thinking, but once that happens, it can't be switched off, which is terrific. And this activation allows for the skills that come from this to be transferred to other languages and to learning in general. And of course, literacy is really important in this. Would that Romanian child have made the connection in octopus without seeing that on the board? Dual language writing is really important. And one of the other great benefits we saw happening in the school was the development of learner autonomy, because the emphasis was on learning. It was on using what the pupil was bringing to the equation. And when the pupils realized that they could do things, they really, they worked and were engaged and delivered ideas and stories and written work that we would never have expected from them. Moving very quickly through the classrooms now, teachers provide worksheets at senior infants. You can see here the teacher has written draw pictures of food. And in this example, we have the child drawing pictures of the food and writing the names underneath in Irish and English. In this one, in Polish and English, and then moving on in this one to sentences and phrases. In school, it is written, you know, after discussion, my school is Skolvrija, my teacher is Miss whoever it is. This is something that's really meaningful and authentic to the child. It's about the situation that he or she is in. She can then take home her work from school and her parents help her to write it in her home language. And what's really important is that she or he gets the opportunity to read this the next day in the two languages for the classmates. Teachers are really good at thinking of ways to promote languages. Teaching the days of the week in sequence is part of the senior infant curriculum. That's done in English first, then done in Irish. And then one teacher said, why not do it in the rest of the languages of the classroom as well? You can imagine the engagement of those children when Polish came up, when Spanish came up, French, and there were a lot more. And these children in senior infants were thrilled that they could say all of these things in all of these different languages. It was a really empowering thing, and it inspired them to begin to delve deeper. In first class, it becomes more elaborate. This is a little worksheet here that the teacher developed. I like to eat, and the child filled in egg in school. Same thing, brought it home and got help with writing it in her language, Malayalam. This piece of work was done unaided in first class, where the child came from a Latvian Russian background, and the parents had already begun to teach her how to write in Russian. So she produced this dual language text. In second and third class, and all of these are available in the guidelines, you can check them all out there. An identity text in Bosnian and English. This is a little extract from my life. I think there's about 4 or 5 pages in it written in Spanish and English, all from second class. And then in third class, a lesson that begins in Irish and that is written up in Irish in class. The teacher says, I want you to do this in English for your homework. And children bring it in, done in English, but also done in their home language. So we're now moving into 3 languages. Fourth class, similarly, here we have procedural writing as to how to make a sandwich, conas capra olavu. The same thing, it was done, started off in Irish, and then this is an example of someone who did it in her home language, Ibu. Have a look at that now and see if you can find the word in Ibu that means bread. And when you find it, you can tell yourself, well, I didn't think I knew any words in Ibu, but now I do. I know the word for bread. So here's plurilingualism and language awareness at work. In 5th class, more plurilingual texts, this one on the theme of my home, where I live. And you can see that it's again started in Irish. This is in an English medium school. It's then done in French, and they've just started learning French, but the topic is the same, the content is the same. Obviously, with the language that they're now beginning to learn, it's not as extensive as it was in Irish, but it's still really good for somebody who's only within the first couple of months of learning French. Malayalam and English. And here's an example of how, when doing geography in relation to the weather, we're looking at whether it's rainy, windy, whether the weather is good, bad, or indifferent, and it's done in 4 languages: French, Irish, English, and Romanian in this case. And then in 6th class, language becomes much more sophisticated. Here we have an example of a poster that was up in one of the 6th classes. The teacher didn't look up all of these words. Here we are again on the topic of clothes. These words are coming from the pupils. It's what's they're offering. And then it goes up onto the poster. This is a report from the secondary school that children visited. And the teacher asked them to write a report in as many languages as they could. And several of them wrote a report, one sentence following the other, in all of the languages that they know. And this one is in Irish, Tagalog, English, and French. The children asked in 6th class if they could put on a fashion show. And the teacher said, yes, you can, but you need to use all of the languages of the classroom during the show to introduce, etc. And then to create a little model and write about her in any of the languages that you can. So we have, this one is about Marceline, and that's it in English. Here it is in Irish, here it is in French, and here it is in Mandarin. So what were the bonuses? The first was a very positive impact on the learning of Irish. Think about it, in an English medium school, all of the pupils in the school are learners of Irish. None of them used Irish as their home language. So it creates a level playing field, and it acts actually as a hinge between all the other home languages, including English. And Scoil Regia was ranked in the top 12% of primary schools for achievement in Irish. Pupils from a very early age take on ambitious, autonomous projects themselves. This little girl decided to write a diary. This is the first page of 5, where she wrote about her dog, Oliver. This is a very good standard of Irish for somebody in 3rd class. She had no help with this. She got the same teaching as everybody else. And when I asked her why she had chosen to write the diary in Irish, she said she liked the sound of it. And also because she could, she wanted to do it. Another child taught herself Spanish, and she wrote me a letter when I was retiring in English and in Spanish, and the level of Spanish was very good, even though it wasn't taught in the school. She did this all by herself. So she had found books in the library when I asked her how she did it. She had a verbal book to learn her nouns and proverbs. I asked her, did she use Google Translate? And she said she preferred to do it herself, but if she wanted to do something quickly. Usually I use my own words, and then I love the confidence of this. I see if Google Translate can get it right. She also used Babbel and 5,000 Words, both online resources. And here we have her telling us, even though she may not have been aware of it, she's self-evaluating. It gives you quizzes to see how well you're doing, or do you need to go back to a previous lesson. The inclusion of home languages promotes well-being, self-esteem, and social cohesion. I asked pupils how they would have felt if they were not allowed to use their language in school. They gave me really articulate answers, which unfortunately I haven't got time to go through here, but I took out the key words. You can see the negativity emanating from these words. I'd feel like as if I was without an arm or a leg. I would be devastated. Very shocking, sad. When they were asked how they felt about the benefits of using their home languages, you can look at the difference in the words they used. And these children were 11 and 12 years of age, and they said things like, it gives you a perspective into another person's point of view. It helps to build friendship. It helps to get to know each other personally. The last thing is, that is important from the point of view of evidence that plurilingualism actually works really well is that standardized tests of English and maths throughout the school performs consistently above the national average. And remember that there are more than 50 languages in that school, and 80% of the children come from more than 50 different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. If you want to find out more about this, the paperback edition of the book Engaging with Linguistic Diversity that David Little and I have written is available now. And these are references that I hope you will be able to access. We also have some references there to the European Centre for Modern Languages, where you can get into the ILI project. I was involved in that myself, and the ECML treasure chest that was produced during the early days of COVID, and a lot more there as well. So thank you very, very much, everybody, for your attention. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Déirdre. Thank you. It's always a privilege to listen to you and to host you at our events. Thank you so much. We will take a few questions at the end of the webinar. I will introduce now the second speaker, and there are some lovely comments that I'd like to read later about your presentation. Thank you, Déirdre.
Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce our second speaker for the day, and it is Liz Mullery from English National School. I have your presentation here, and I'll close this and I'll open the slides.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Everybody hear me? Excellent.
Yes.
Now I'll apologize in advance in case we have a lot of noise in the background shortly, because we are a very small school and it is break time, and it's quite likely that any minute now we will have a herd of elephants passing by, but we will do our best. So I'm going to start by just explaining what our school is like. So if you have a look there at our first slide, you'll see English National School is a change maker, it's an Ashoka change maker school. It's one of only 15 in the country. We are a very small, and I mean small, rural school in Haskell, just outside Ballinasloe in County Galway. We have 35 kids on roll at the moment. We have split them into 3 groups. We have the junior and senior infants, and we have the 1st to 3rd, and then we have the 4th to 6th. We are right out the countryside, and we have, as you can see, our golden rules are we work together, do our best, and respect each other. Now, if you look at the poster that the children have pointed out, you could see we started to take on forest school principals recently in the last couple of years, and we started to introduce outdoor education in our school. And the reason for that is over the last number of years, our school has changed in that now we have the vast majority of our kids coming from the traveller community. We have a Jesh school, and we found a huge range of kids in our school. We have children from the hugely high flyers. One of our kids last year spoke at a medical conference where she was quite literally the only person in the room without a PhD. She spoke in front of doctors and whatever. She gave a little speech about mindfulness and how we are bringing mental health appreciation and so on into schools, and what we are doing in our school. And she was able to stand up and do that, and she had written the speech herself. And at the other end of the scale, then we have children that have speech and language difficulties or disorders. We have people with expressive language, receptive language difficulties, and everything in between. So a huge range of kids. We also have a range of accessibility to technology as well. Some of our kids have access to Wi-Fi and laptops at home. Other kids then are all trying to operate off mom and dad's mobile phone. So we have a huge range of kids in the school. And we found that also, even with that, there were kids, some kids didn't do especially well in the classroom. Whereas if you gave them the opportunity to take their lessons outside, suddenly they're focused and suddenly they're with you and they're learning. So if you go to the next one, you'll see in our school, we're very, very blessed. If you go to the next slide, you'll see this is our sensory garden, and we are blessed that we have 3 acres of land attached to the school. And in those 3 acres, we have a polytunnel where we grow our own vegetables. We have a playing field, football and hurling field. We have sectioned off a section at the bottom of the field where we've planted 100 trees, and that is going into our own little private forest. And we have a sensory garden for, we had children last year with on the autistic spectrum, and they really appreciated the sensory garden. But we found that even kids that don't have special needs love every so often a little bit of an outdoor break to go and do something in the sensory garden. And if you look at the next slide, we also, as you can see, we have active flags and so on. These are the kind of things that we do when we're doing our outdoor education outside. We, the top left-hand side of your screen, you'll see in our sensory garden, when we had our European partners over as part of our Erasmus project, each of them painted a little flag for their country, and that's part of our garden. And you can see on the right-hand side some of the activities that we do outside. Now, in our current project, the one that we're working on at the moment, we focused on 6 areas: language, literacy and communication, mathematics and numeracy, expressive arts, science and technology, health and well-being, and humanities. And we've developed lessons that can be done outside. And we found those lessons have produced increased engagement and motivation with the kids. They're interested more, they collaborate more, and also we collaborate with the different partners as well. We have a greater sense of belonging to the same kind of community as well. The health benefits are obvious because they're outside, they're in the fresh air. And also they're learning about the environment. So we can bring in a whole lot of stuff from SPHE, from geography and so on. We can learn about the climate and so on. So if you look at the next slide, you'll see that these are some of the things that we do. We have we had a local person came and chopped up some trees for us, and we made little seats, and now we have our circle time there. And the tree that is under is a very old tree, and in the summertime there's beautiful leaves and so on underneath. We have an actual canopy. We have a 6-week block per group every year devoted to where they spend their morning outside. We call that the Fresh Air Club. And one of the things that they do there is at the end of their lesson outside, especially in the winter time, they have a little flask of hot chocolate that they bring out, and they just love that. That's a real treat for them. And basically the teachers have done extra training and so on outdoor learning, and they bring that to bear on the lessons that we do. So you can see that one of the lessons there is about the short-eared owl. But any of the lessons, you can teach any subject through this, even art. We've done fantastic collages made just out of leaves and sticks, all kinds of things that we can do outside. And obviously music. I mean, the singing outside is brilliant, especially now with the virus. You can't really sing indoors, but you can sing outdoors. So we can get into our circles and we can do that outdoors, and it's wonderful. So on the next slide, you'll see these are some of the things that we do outside of this the set time. So we'll every so often we'll do an outdoor walk. So we go for a walk in the forest, or we go down one of our local roads there and in our groups, and we'll gather things. And then these are the signs that you can see that we have on the various different areas in the field, so that when we're outside, the kids can have a look at that. For example, the true meaning of life is to plant trees. That's on our little forest that we planted. So if you go on to the next bit, you'll see we were awarded a Tidy Towns Prize, and the kids had to go up and collect an award. This was pre-pandemic, and you know, we've had other awards because of what we've been doing. Now, on the right-hand side of the picture there, you can see our little cupboard with all the wellies. Each child brings in their own wellies, because obviously in Ireland you can't really rely on weather, and so they have their own little set of wellies, and every time we have to go out, they put on the little wellies. And we also have outdoor wet weather clothing, they're little waterproof trousers and waterproof jackets, and when we're doing our Fresh Air Club, they wear that, so that it doesn't really matter what the weather is like. We go out regardless of whether it's raining or whatever. The only time we don't go out is when it's stormy, because obviously it's dangerous. But other than that, we're out, rain, hail or shine, and the kids just love it. And on the left-hand side, they made that mud kitchen themselves. We had a lady come in and she showed them how to do it, and they cut up the bits of wood out of pallets, and they painted it, and the fence as well. They did all that themselves. So that was projects that we did outside. Next one you can see on the next slide. This was our project. This was, now, We started with the one on the left-hand side. That's Outdoor Learning, Happy Children Make Happy Learners. That's a project that we started with Finland, Sweden, 2 schools in Wales, and Italy, Sicily. And we got together, and the schools are very, very different. The one in Sweden has children from infants up to 4 years old. So they're all the preschools. And then the one in Italy has a junior school attached, and there's 350 kids there. And they have right up to age 14. So we have that range of kids. And also they come from different backgrounds. Some of them have special needs, as same as some of ours have special needs. Some of them come from various different backgrounds. They have various different socioeconomic backgrounds as well. So we are very, very inclusive in all the different things that we do. And that project then finished this year. And we got on so well. We had such a fantastic rapport and relationship with the teachers that we worked with, that we started a new project. And the new project this time is called Outdoor Learning Inclusion for All Our Children. And the point of that was, we found that by working together, we could share our resources, we could share the good practice that everyone is doing. We could also share the various different things that each school is doing. The Swedish school, for example, has the little babies taking their naps, I kid you not, in minus 14 and 15 degrees outside. They go into their prams and they're all wrapped up and whatever. So they're out taking their naps regardless of the weather. And then we are all very, very jealous of the Italian school because they all have the fantastic weather outside, but they don't have the outdoor facilities that we have because they're in the city. So they have to come up with ways of being creative with their gardening and planting and so on in an urban setting. And we don't have those issues. So we share the different problems and the different things that we have. Sorry, I've lost my train. Oh yes, and basically what you can see from that is it follows on from the project that we were doing. So basically, as I said to you, the 6 focuses of our project at the moment: language, literacy and communication. That's project number 1 focus. And I'm reading this out now from the thing. We develop first language, multi-language aspect, experience spoken and written language, as well as images in various forms and genres. In other words, we put our main project in Underpinning through in English, but we all deal with the various different things in our own languages. Now, one of the things we did was we put together language cards. Now, you won't be able to see very much, but we took all the various different things like colors, and we figured out what they were in all the different languages. And then we did things like trees and dogs and all of the different things that we encounter in our various different lives. And of course, then things like leaves and flowers and all the different things and weather. And we found out all the different words for all those different things in all the different languages, and we put them together. And we then shared all of that. So we shared all the different language formats that we had. We put together a fantastic booklet. And we're going to be doing something similar with this project. And it has observing changes in nature, games in nature. We came up with all the different games that each country has. We shared all of them, and we made up some of our own. Collecting natural resources. So we put together all the different things that we could collect in our different areas. Now, again, including all of the different ones, because some of us are out the countryside, some of us have access to things, other people are up in the cities, and so on. Entrepreneurship. We came up with different ways of taking what we had and encouraging the kids then to come up with ways. And we made Christmas wreaths. One of the other schools made a flower thing in a jar. Somebody else came up with dried flowers on a beautiful print. And they were selling them and whatever for the school. And then of course we had climate and climate change. So we all put together experiments and projects and all the different things that we could do for that. So if you go on to the next slide, you will see this is the kind of thing that we put together. And on the right-hand side, we in English, we have a polytunnel and a vegetable garden. We're blessed. And every year we make our own soup from our vegetables. And that is a highlight of the year. But some of the other schools, as you can see on the bottom left, they made their collages out of leaves and so on. And so did we. And we put that together and we shared that then from the different schools. So if you go on to the next slide. these are things that we've planted, and our outdoor calendar on the left-hand side. And again, all the other schools will have had similar calendars and similar events, and we tend to share that then, and we contact each other and we'll do an activity based on that. Now, there's been no mobilities at the moment because of COVID, but we can collaborate on Zoom, and we can collaborate by sharing the various different planning and things that we do. So if you go on to the next one, again, our outdoor classroom, and the next one. Oh, that was it. Okay, so basically, to go back over it, our project that we have at the moment, Inclusion for All Our Children, is a follow-on from the previous one. And as I said, we have the 6 partners. We have the 2 Welsh schools, we have the Finnish school, we have the Swedish school, that's the kindergarten, we have the Italian school. We share our different good practice, and we've made such good friends from these people that we're working with. We've had huge excitement recently because one of our Welsh partners has just had a baby. So we've had cards going forward and greetings from the kids, and it's been fantastic. When they came here a couple of years back, there was people in from the community, and they were able to showcase in our local library all the different things that we did. And we've been in touch with, we've got an e-twinning award, and we can put all our stuff, everything that we do, the booklets, the stuff that we've created, the stuff for the entrepreneurship, everything goes up on our e-twinning, and it can be shared. So if you go onto your e-twinning and you look for the resources, they're all up there. What else have we got? We put on a little show, a little dance performance as well. And all the kids got together, and we could film it and could pass it on. And we learned so much from each other. And I cannot tell you what a privilege it is for our school to have the opportunity to work with Léargas and to work with people in different countries. We share our language, we share our resources, we share our commitment. And these teachers, we have a huge diverse population between the different teachers, the different countries, the different cultures, the different languages, the different levels of ability of the different children, the different special needs, the different access to technologies that we have. But we share a huge commitment to education and a passion for passing on the education and the information to the kids and giving them the opportunity to develop in a way that they might not be able to do in the 4 walls of a classroom. But by working outside, by working with nature, by learning, by doing, it has made a huge, huge difference. And sharing with our international partners has brought an element to it that we could never have done on our own. And I'll just say one last thing to you. You've all seen the meme, or you've all seen the poster where they say, they bring a fish and a dog and a cat and a bird and everything. And they say, right, we're going to test your ability now by seeing how well each of you can climb a tree. So this is our opportunity to say to kids, we know that you can do things. We know you can do amazing things. We're going to get you out into the outdoors. We're going to give you away from a classroom, away from structured lessons. Our lessons are structured. Our lessons are structured and designed and beautifully planned, but they're not the stand at the classroom and show you a picture on a blackboard kind of lesson. We're going to show you something, and we're going to give you the opportunity to show us what you can do. And our kids have never let us down. The kids in all the different schools have just shown us the power of giving them the chance to show off what they can do. Between the language stuff they've prepared, it would blow your mind, the stuff that these kids have been able to achieve in the last couple of years. And I want to say a huge thanks to Léargas, because without them, we wouldn't have had access to all these different schools, all these different abilities, because each of these teachers brings new things, and we've all learned from each other, and it has been an honor and a privilege, and everybody should do it. I can't sing the praises of Léargas enough.
Thank you, Liz. We're only here to facilitate your work, to facilitate the social cohesion element, the inclusion elements that both Déirdre and you were speaking about today. And I think in both your presentations, it became clear that, especially in the primary setting, every teacher is a language teacher. It applies for across the board for post-primary as well, but especially in primary. I think it is important to emphasize that every teacher is a language teacher. And, I suppose every subject deals with language at the end of it. We have some wonderful comments and a couple of questions here. People love your garden, Jenny. And we had some wonderful comments, Déirdre, and I didn't see that myself, but Jenny, Papas Sotiriu, if I'm doing it justice, sorry, Jenny, if I don't, was saying that it was fascinating to see in the manual the case of the deaf child with both ISL and Ethiopian. And also, Jenny has a question for you, Déirdre. And she does say that she appreciates that this is not an easy issue. How can school infrastructure assist with education classes in the home language involving educators outside the family? For example, with structured remote exchanges gradually being built into the school program. Sorry, Déirdre, we can't hear you.
If I understand the question, I think there are huge possibilities there. I mean, we tried to do this when we were a number of years ago when we got internet into the school, but unfortunately, and I know we complain about internet in Ireland, but we actually, the places where we had contacts on mainland Europe, they hadn't got access to internet, so it couldn't be done. But for example, when we were teaching French in 5th and 6th class, we tried to connect with a French school. What better way for children to learn than from their counterparts in a French school? So, and again, it's a win-win situation for everybody, where the Irish children would be learning French from native speakers of the language, and they'd have all of the current cool phrases, etc. in French, and equally for the French children trying to learn English and of course Irish as well, because I think it's very important for us to let people know that it actually is our first official language, and it's a curricular subject here too. So there's I think there's massive opportunities from that point of view. But I don't know if that's exactly the question the person was asking.
Let's see if Jenny is still here.
I'm still here, actually. I was meant to go, but I couldn't. I had to say this was fascinating. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't have an easy answer. It's you know, it's always been everyone's problem. And I suppose my main concern is languages that are not this, you know, big colonial languages that have very established learning. I mean, I saw Ethiopian and all these fascinating ones. And I suppose one of the things that your project made me realize is that this was great for the overall achievement of the child. But in terms of thinking their skills in minority languages with, you know, the long-term societal outcome of knowledge production in these languages, you know, I'm thinking of that in the background as well. Yeah, not an easy task. I suppose Ireland has a great advantage in the fact that it is a bilingual country.
And
so,
if I can just say this to you, and I think this is really important for Irish people to hear. I have heard this so often on mainland Europe, that we are so lucky that we are, in theory, a bilingual country. And we certainly found, and we had fears in the beginning, as any minority language group will have, we had fears in the beginning that with more than 50 other languages, some of them which were some of the, you know, the big languages of the world, would the Irish language be damaged by that? Would it be swamped by that? Absolutely not. The exact opposite. And I think that we'll say with the regional accents or the regional dialects, etc., in various countries in Europe, I think people are becoming more aware of this now. And we, as you say, we have a huge asset here, but very often something that you're dealing with every day of the week, you don't see it until somebody else points it out to you, you know.
This did not surprise me.
Yeah.
And actually, Liz, you might, I don't know, you might have something there as well. Working in a kind of rural as opposed to urban environment, it was interesting to see the two presentations together. I found it fascinating.
Yeah, well, we're very blessed here with what we have with the land and everything, but we do find working with the different partners in the different countries, they have completely different experiences. Some of them are right in the center of the city, and some of them have a huge diversity in terms of the population of the school, in terms of culture and language and so on. And then you have us with our 35 little kids. And but even having said that, because even with our own 35 kids, I mean, the vast majority of them are from the traveller community, but even within that, you have a huge diversity. Because you have some that have grown up in the countryside and some that come to us from the town, and they have different families and different things going on at different times, and then you have the children with special needs and whatever. And we had a little child until last year from Mongolia, and he was part of our culture as well. But we found that when the children were working on the different projects with the different countries, they were swapping information on the camera with the different, what's the word for this, what's the word for that, how do you do this, how do you do that, and they were just so keen to share their experiences and their language and their everything, and they were dying to sing for each other and do their little dances for each other and show each other the little artworks that they did. And if ever there was a festival or anything, can we show them what we did for Christmas? Can we show them what we did for this? Can we show them what we did? Look what we made this morning, kind of thing. And it's just heartwarming. It really is.
Can I just,
wonderful to see it in action, yeah.
Ellie, can I just come in there for a second? I mean, what you're saying there, Liz, is really, really interesting. And we had travellers in our school as well. And I think there's a great opportunity there for empowering them.
Yes.
By getting their language up on the wall, because this is something that very often people don't acknowledge with traveller groups. So again, it's a very empowering thing for them too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Their culture is recognised in our school as well. We have a history wall, and we have photographs up from their grandparents and whatever, and all the different things.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
brilliant.
Brilliant.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
They're great kids. They're fantastic kids.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
If you don't mind, I will launch a little survey to see how we did today. If you don't mind sharing your views, and I think I have read for most of the questions. There were all lovely comments. If you don't mind taking your phones out, because this probably won't work on the desktop, and go to menti.com and insert the code there written above the screen, 3942366. So that's 3942366. We would appreciate your input on today's program and